Welcome to Seniorship, conversations about getting the most out of later life. Today my guest is Kevin Shields. Kevin is a neighbour of mine, that's how I know him. I also know him to be the embodiment of Arnold Schwarzenegger's mantra, be useful. Kevin is someone who is very useful to all our neighbours, as you will learn, because of the skills that he has, and not just the skills, but the helpfulness and attitude that he has. And partway through this episode, you will learn something quite surprising about him. So please listen and enjoy the show.
There you go. Now I can see you as well. Right. Now listen, folks, I know Kevin because we both live in the same retirement village. And now I didn't plan to live in a retirement village, and I arrived here almost by accident, really. Well, I was about to tell you what I think about living here, but I won't, because what's more interesting is what my guest today, Kevin Shields, thinks of living here. So if it's okay to start with this, I will. Kevin, you've been living here for how long now, roughly?
Just over 4 years.
4 years, okay. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like living here?
I do like living here, but I have to admit that given a choice of living here and living where I lived before, I
Yes.
would choose to live where I did live.
Well,
But because but the reason why I do live here is my wife made an argument that we move here, and unfortunately her argument was so good I couldn't rebut it in any way whatsoever. So all I had to do, left to do, was to basically sulk for 6 months before we made the final move.
well, when you said her argument was too good to be rebutted, I mean, I'm not married now, but I have been for some years, and yeah, that's a scenario that I'm very familiar with. Yes, her argument was too good. Um, when you said you were reluctant to move here, but now you're here, you've got used to it, and obviously you like it to a great extent. What were the reasons you were living in Scotland before?
Yes, and I was living rurally, and that's what I liked. Whereas Eileen likes the city life, me not so much. But I can see I can see the advantages, and as I say, her arguments were such that I couldn't rebut them. So reluctantly, I moved here, but once I got here, I saw that it was a good idea.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm glad you raised it, because then I didn't have to decide myself. Do I raise this? Because I know from conversations with you previously, Kevin, that you've said this, that you were reluctant to move here, but now you've got here, and that's very interesting. The point you made about Eileen's a city person more, you're a country person more, and those differences are they're quite significant, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I think the main difference is this is how I like to see it. Uh, where we lived before, we were rural, and in 30 minutes you could be more in the countryside. So, and here, although we're in the centre of Birmingham, the countryside, you can get into the countryside in about half an hour. But the difference is, when I was in Scotland, half an hour's travel meant that you were in the countryside alone.
Ah.
Whereas here you're in the countryside, but there's always other people there.
Absolutely. Well, we live here, this retirement village where we live, it's called Audley St George's Place in Edgbaston on the edge of Birmingham. And so we're probably, what, a mile and a half from Birmingham New Street Station, something like
Yeah,
that.
I would say that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we are on the edge, but pretty central, really. And Birmingham is, for anyone who doesn't know, is the second city in the UK. Population of what, 1.1 million, something of that sort, I would guess. I would guess. So, Kevin, now, you, I know for a fact you're a wheelchair user, aren't you?
Um,
And the reason I raise this is because I was having a conversation with someone recently about the fact that, or my theory anyway, that one of the secrets to a happy and a long life is a positive attitude. And
Absolutely.
that's a theory of mine. I mean, I don't have too much evidence to back it up, but it's just a theory. And this person said, yeah, that's fine, but surely that depends on physical health, doesn't it? And I said, what do you mean by that exactly? She said, well, if you're in perfect physical health, you're going to be positive, and if you're not in perfect physical health, you're not going to be positive. And I thought, well, I'm not sure I agree with that because I know lots of people who are in very good physical health, but are negative people, uh,
Yeah.
and vice versa. And you, I know, have been a wheelchair user since the age of what?
17, 18.
17, 18. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a long time. But you strike me, Kevin, and you're gonna tell me now that I'm that it's all a facade, that I'm lying. But you strike me, and always have, as a very positive person.
No, I think you have a choice. When you come across any form of difficulty, whether physical or mental, most of the time, I wouldn't say all the time, but most of the time you have a choice on how you deal with it. You can either decide that, well, yes, this is a bad experience, but I'm going to make the best of it, or I'm going to, this is a bad experience, I'm just going to wallow in the difficulty. And one of those leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the other gives you hope and expresses a desire to move on and make things the best it can be.
Okay. Well, so you've confirmed what my impression of you is, that you've been coping with this since you were 17, 18 years old. And that was, I think, the result of an accident, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was a passenger on a motorbike, and it crashed. I don't remember the crash, uh, but yeah, the driver of the motorcycle, he got a broken jaw and a broken wrist, and unfortunately, I had a more serious injury, and it left me in the wheelchair.
Hmm. Let me try on you another of my theories about the secret to a long and happy-ish or very happy later life, and that is something that's sometimes called purpose in life. And I once heard somebody say that um, if if you're interested in finding a purpose in life, then one way to do it is to think about what you're particularly good at, because most of us are average at some things, rubbish at others, and particularly good or better than average at certain ones. Now, out of about 120, I think, people here, you know more about IT than anyone here, correct?
I think you're right, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm an expert. I have the appearance of expertise just because I know a little more than the other person.
Well, it's charitable of you to say the appearance of expertise, because I definitely rate you as an expert, and everyone here knows that you're an expert, and therefore you are much in demand, are you not, to solve everyday IT problems?
Yeah, but it's like everyone has some form of technology, and most people can use it perfectly well. It's when certain changes are made and you're unaware of, because people don't know what they don't know, and you if you have an interest in technology, as I do, then I've made it my business to know a little more, and so I have perhaps a little more confidence. Uh, and that is the confidence is the thing, is because not all of the time do I know the answer, but I'm prepared to have a go, and it's having the confidence, knowing that I'm not going to make anything worse because I won't do anything that I know that could potentially make things worse.
Well, that's a good way of seeing it, actually, and the confidence to try things. And I know, for example, although you're an iPhone user and I'm an Android user, you've helped me with problems connected with my Android phone. And normally, I mean, I know for a fact that if anybody with an iPhone asks me about a problem, I have no clue about how to respond. And you, for example, have helped me a million times with major problems I've had with Microsoft. And your patience knows no bounds. And as a result, not a result of my my demands on you, but everybody else's demands on you. Am I right in thinking that your good lady has put limits, time limits on the times you're available for
Absolutely.
consultation?
Yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays, basically.
Tuesdays and Thursdays. My impression is that, given half a chance, you'd be available longer. But I won't ask you to respond to that.
Okay. You are kind of right. But I know what it's like to be in that position where you don't know the next step to take. So I can appreciate what people are going through when they're in that position because I've been in it myself. It's just now because I've done it so long, I tend to have an idea of what path to go down.
Well, that's good actually. Yeah, but if you like, you underplayed it, but it's of immense value. That your skill and the fact that you're prepared to help people and put in a lot of time to do it is of massive help to people here. Because I tell you why. We just started to try something on our interviews or conversations here, and we had a meeting yesterday, and we decided that we would try a questionnaire that one of my colleagues, Paul Godwin, had developed. This questionnaire, and that we would do it as a series of bonus questions at the end of every conversation. And I'm not going to ask you today because we haven't finalised the questionnaire, but maybe I'll ask you on another occasion to record your answers to those questions. The reason I mentioned is this, because they were all simple questions. They were all straightforward, short questions. Please answer in 1 minute or so, something like that. One of the questions was, in your view, what's been the most valuable invention during your lifetime? And so I was asked that. So we recorded, the three of us in the seniorship team here, we recorded our own answers to that question. And I said, the World Wide Web, or the internet, as we call it. I mean, and I said, well, because I like to keep in touch with people, and those people aren't necessarily in the next room. They're not necessarily in my house. They're not necessarily in this retirement village. So the World Wide Web makes that possible in a nanosecond. Well, theoretically, provided you've got a decent broadband connection. And so I said that makes this technology, from my point of view, incredibly valuable because particularly for people getting older, the ability to keep in touch with friends and also with world affairs, if that's what you want to do, with latest developments in whatever your field of study or field of hobby is, all those things, massive, absolutely massive.
Yeah, but the one issue with that though is digital inclusion isn't something that's thought about. So although there's a big movement to put everything online, there isn't the instruction available for those elderly that haven't actually been brought up with technology use, and that can lead to its own difficulties.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because we had here at Audley St George's Place some courses, did we not, run by a charity called AbilityNet. And I'm glad you've reminded me of that because, yeah, you're right. Many people are excluded, unwittingly excluded from that knowledge because they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So maybe on our Facebook page, we should put a link to AbilityNet, who run. It's a charity, and they work with BT and with EE, the mobile phone company, and their mission is to deliver IT consulting.
Now, what I should say is you shouldn't hide your light under a bushel because that you instigated that group coming to Order St. George to provide that service to the people here. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for remembering it. Yeah, I just happened to see an advert in the local paper for these digital courses, and I went along, and and at the end of the course, the guy said, who was running it, a lovely guy called Mohammed, he said, "Well, thank you for coming along. And the courses were run at BT's offices in the middle of Birmingham." And he said, "We prefer to do these courses where people live." And I said, well, I live in a place where there's 120 people in, not in the same house, but in the same, complex here. And so they came along. And they'll come again, hopefully.
Yeah,
They've been twice already. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. That's good. Anyway, listen, you deliver a lot of help to people here. And I think I've just remembered who it was. It was Deepak Chopra who said, he said, it's this Sanskrit word called dharma. And he said it stands for, it means purpose in life. He said, and a lot of people never give that a second thought. But those who do wonder about it say, well, why am I taking up space on this planet here? Especially when they get older, they say, well, actually, am I contributing more than I'm using in terms of the Earth's resources and everyone's time, etc., etc. And Chopra's theory was very straightforward. He said, well, to just summarize what I said before, is if you can crystallize what it is that's your particular skill, something that you're particularly good at, and that you can use that to help other people, just as you're doing, then he reckoned you're halfway there. And so, yeah. So maybe,
Well,
yeah, carry on.
I think, part of it is when you live in a community like this, um, there is hopefully there is a community spirit, and you want to contribute to that community in some way.
Yeah.
And my way of contributing is offering assistance when people get stuck. I might not always have the answer, but I'll have an idea of where to go next.
Okay. Now, we've talked about, for example, what you do to help people here, and we've talked about the fact that you were a bit reluctant to come here for very good reasons, I understand, because if you were a country person, that's a big, big thing, really. But what else do you like about living here? Are there other activities here that you particularly like?
Well, there are advantages in living in a city because you've got all the theatres, libraries, museums, and I do enjoy that. And having it on your doorstep, because we're only a mile, as you say, a mile and a half from the centre of Birmingham, is just wonderful.
And what about living in this particular village, or a retirement village, let's say?
Well, I can only talk about this village, but which is really good because there is that sense of community. But like any time there's a group of people, you get a range of individuals, and uh, some people have positive mental attitudes, others are less so, and it's learning to accommodate that, like we do in life anyway.
Okay, okay. Um, Now, am I right in saying I've seen you playing? I can't remember if you're a bridge player.
I did play bridge when I first came here, but then I
Okay.
realized how badly I was playing it.
Well, you and me both. Kevin, I gave up bridge when I left school because I thought it seemed to me a very good way to lose friends.
Yeah.
People cursing at each other. "Oh, why do you lead? Why do you lead that?" And all this kind of thing. But um, there are all sorts of other sort of board games and what have you that are played here. Chess, I mentioned bridge. Chess is played here. Scrabble,
Scrabble,
and a
Rummy
game
Cup.
called Rummy Cub. Do you play that
Yes,
one?
I do, but I've never heard of it until I came here.
Nor had I. Nor had
Yeah,
I. And there's Scrabble. You play Scrabble sometimes, don't
I
you?
do. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, badly again. I'm really good at doing things badly.
You, you say that. You say that. Do you know what? First impressions count a lot, don't they? And uh, I count myself very lucky in that when I first arrived here, there's one person I bumped into, and you know exactly who I'm talking about. Big, tall chap here, wears glasses, enthusiastic and full of life. He's got some struggles at the moment um, with with his legs, but nonetheless, very positive chap. And he was the
Absolutely.
first person I met, and he said to me, he said, "Ah, right, you're new here." He said, first thing you've got to know is this. Tuesday evening, Saturday evening, happy hour in the bar. Half price
Yeah.
drinks, very popular.
There's only one thing more popular than that, is that's where it's free.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because yes, yeah, because we have coffee morning, do we not, on a Thursday, when the coffee and the tea are free, and there's always cake of some sort, isn't there?
Absolutely. And
That's
the
free.
the new daily newspapers are provided.
Oh
So
yes,
we're very fortunate.
we are. We are. Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you said we're very fortunate, and I think I don't know what you think about this, but I think that gratitude's a very underutilized thing. I mean, an example of that, there's a stand-up comedian called Jimmy Carr. I'm sure you've come across him. Well, I wasn't sure whether I like him or not, um, but I'm coming to the conclusion now that the time to make up your mind about someone is never. And Jimmy Carr was being interviewed on a podcast called Diary of a CEO.
Right.
So the podcast is hosted by a guy called Stephen Bartlett, who is one of the Dragon's Den guys.
All right.
Anyway, so Jimmy Carr was being interviewed on that podcast, and he was being serious for a change. And what he was talking about was, he said, you know, people sadly take for granted things that they shouldn't take for granted. He said, just at a practical level, he said, uh, just imagine, he said, if you can think about anyone you might have admired from 50 years ago or 100 years ago, um, they couldn't take for granted some of the pleasures of life that you have. Say, for example, that every morning you could walk into a hot shower and you know, you press the button or turn the lever or whatever, and it would happen. Good. And even more important, that if you had children, that your children would have every expectation of living a healthy life, surviving childbirth in the first few years
Yes.
and living a healthy life. All those things which could not be taken. And he said it's such a shame, to his view, that we take it for granted and we're not grateful for it.
Yeah, and it goes further than that. I think is when someone serves you in a restaurant or a bistro that we have here, uh, it's good to say thank you, because if you're anything like me, if I get poor service, I let it be known that I'm not happy. So I think if you get good service, then you should be as expressive about that. Because it brightens up everyone's day if you say, please and thank you.
It does. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning it. That's a very good point, actually. Hey, listen, I'm not gonna take any more of your time, but what I'm going to do is, Kevin, I'm going to send you, if I may, the bonus questions.
Okay.
I'm going to record a little separate session with you, which will only take 10 minutes probably to answer the questions. And for example, I'm giving you advance warning of this. One of those will be, what's the most important, valuable invention in your lifetime?
Okay. Well, it's hmm, the thing that I find most valuable that's been created in my lifetime, I would say, is the Equality Act, because that's
Yeah.
had a direct impact on the ability for me to live my life and live a productive life. And had it not been for that, um, my life would have been so much more difficult, because it encourages the change for to provide services and the opportunity for those people who have um, various physical challenges to be considered in society. Because when I first came to Birmingham back in the late 70s, early 80s to
Because
go to
you were at college here,
university,
weren't you?
yeah, I traveled. I had to travel down in the back of a guard's van on the train, whereas now, if I travel by train, not only can I sit at a table, there's a loo that I can get into, whereas before that wasn't the case. So that's a direct result of the legislation that's been passed in this country.
Wow. Thank you. Well, thank you for saying that. I'm going to try and find a way to pass on those compliments to people who involved in that work or were involved in that work to take that legislation forward, because appreciation is the number one
Absolutely.
motivator in everything we do, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
On that note, Kevin Shields, I'm going to leave it there and say thank you very much for being part of Seniorship.
Thank you. I've enjoyed every moment. Thank you.
Thanks.